Your scientists here, any branch? Okay, most of you, all of them. Okay, not many administrators here. Okay, okay, fine. So that I could just, tailor my. It's the first time I'm giving a talk on this topic. I wish, somebody about 30 years back had asked me to give a talk. I would have prepared, and I could have used all those concepts in my own career, at different levels. But now I'm reading so much importance of this when I myself cannot probably do very much about it. I hope we'll all learn something. Some of them will be basics as we go through that. Let's see. Oops. Okay, now ethics. If you look into Oxford Dictionary, what it says is the definition is moral principles that govern a person's behavior of or conducting an activity. It's the moral principles. So it is not like many other scientific thing where there are rules, do's, don'ts, etc., etc. So in ethics, as you will see, many times it works in a context. Actually, I wouldn't say that in one context this is good, the other context it is bad. It is not like that. But there are no general rules, and each case you have to consider it differently. And it's the branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles. So it also has some philosophy associated with it. So it's fundamental branch of philosophy that dwells into complex questions surrounding morality, principles, and values that dictate our behavior and decision-making process. Now, there are different kinds of ethics. These are broad ones. You can add more just in the broad terms. You can have, for example, personal ethics at a personal sense, which is driven mostly by the so-called our own morality, what we have. And as you see, many times what is moral to one person may not be moral to other person. There are a lot of differences, but that is at the personal level. And the second level is at the professional level, where certain standards and expectations you have of a particular profession, and you have to meet those goals, and you apply ethics to achieve those things. And then ethics at the societal levels, when you're dealing with a community, what kind of ethical principles you follow, how do you engage a community in terms of good ethics. And finally, ethics in leadership and management, and this is perhaps a little bit related to professional ethics, but when you're a leader or when you're a manager, either in a company or any other setup, what kind of ethical guidelines that you follow. So the basic thing about question, this is the most important thing. What it says is that the question is, should I do the right thing? When you face with a situation, should I do the right thing? That's not the question. The thing is, what is the right thing to do? That's the one. It's an absolute sense. What is the right thing we have to do? That is more important than should I do the right thing? That's obvious. We should do the right thing, but the more importance is what is the right thing to do. So finally, ethics is nothing but many times common sense. It's not a deep, rocket science kind of thing. It is common sense. Like, for example, don't harm others, or yourself. Don't harm yourself either mentally or physically. Help others as you would help yourself. Respect truth. Don't lie, cheat, deceive. All these things about it. Many of them we don't put it, but we may be practicing it. Be faithful. Keep promises and agreements. When you make some promise agreements, stick to that. Be fair. Treat equals equally. Even among the equals, you treat them all equally. Not that one equal is more than the other kind of thing. In my own life, I try to practice this. Treat others as you wish yourself to be treated. Many times, we behave in certain way, and after that, yourself will feel bad. Then you ask a question, would anybody, if somebody else treats me like that, would I feel happy? I think that is my own life guiding principle. I never do something to others which I will not do it, myself. That's the most important thing. Now, let's take one by one and see how it works out. Societal ethics. It is just to allow people to make free informed choices. Don't impose on them, give them a chance to express themselves, let them express themselves. Don't bias their opinions by your own ethics and standards. Let them come out with that. Let them make free and informed choices. Give them all the information, let them make choices. Respect privacy and confidentiality. Many times we don't do that. We hear something, somebody says, confesses with you, and without our own knowledge, we tell somebody else. We don't apply the judgment. Is it has to remain in privacy to the person, or you can discuss with others. So respecting others' privacy and confidentiality is very important, because all of us, we know, we don't go and talk to everybody everything. We feel certain confidence in somebody, we express ourselves, but somebody does like that, don't, you have to respect the privacy. And these days, as you know, privacy is becoming very, very important. Maximize benefits while reducing harms for most people. Reduce harms but get maximum benefit. So what ethics does is it compels the members of a given society to engage in actions that safeguard individuals while simultaneously advancing the collective well-being. So individual advances, thereby it also results in collective well-being. But how do we decide what is the right thing to do? Given a situation, you analyze what is the right thing to do. One is you ask a question, can I justify the choice of my action? When I was dealing with ICER Pune, many people, students come and ask, faculty come and ask, somebody else come and ask. The first question I ask is, to whom this will be beneficial? To the students, to the faculty, I have to get convinced myself that it is beneficial to somebody. So that is important. Can I justify the choice of my action, to whom it is applicable? Suppose you make a decision, there's nothing like an absolute, it will, favor somebody harm, but then can I live with it afterwards? After taking a decision, after 2 days, 3 days, I myself will feel miserable. Can I live it with afterwards? That you have to think in advance. You know the consequences of it, maybe the negative consequences, but you think if that happens, can I justify myself and live it, afterwards? Are there others? You're lost, whether you can advise somebody, you can get advice from somebody, or you act in gut feelings. Many times we do get gut feelings. We do act, and sometimes it succeeds also. And then we go and tell, no, I had no rationale, but I acted in gut feeling. But I think it is better when you get gut feelings, wait for some time, and then think about it, and then act on that. That is important. So in this context, all these things, why you have to worry is that whatever decision you make, there is a factor accountability. You take a decision tomorrow, there is an accountability. People will ask you, why did you take decision, etc. So you must have a good rationale for taking those decisions. Accountability is invariably related to ethics. Not only that, there are 3 factors which are very, very important for ethics. One is the transparency, the clarity of decision, responsibility, you own up the responsibility for your decision, and ethical conduct. These 3 are very, very closely, intricately they're linked. Now, together, they are the foundation for ethical behavior, and whether it is in public administration or organizational management, these 3 things become important. The transparency with which you take decision, and responsibility, and the ethical conduct. So let us take public administration. I have just put it as public administration. It may refer to anything, right from director of an institute to, large ministry people, anywhere it can, public administration. Now, implementation, what do a public servant do? He implements the government policies. Government makes policies, he has to just implement it. How he implements, that is a question that may be related to ethics. Administrators entrusted with managing the public resources and making decisions, because they make a decision that affects everyone. Initially, when the policy is taken, they may not have had that kind of a large picture, but when you start implementing, you will find that it has a much broader implications. Ethics dictates the principles and values. In order to make these decisions, ethics plays an important part, in the behavior of administrators in carrying out their duties. So ethics and accountability constitute, that is the backbone of all, public service decisions. Now, ethical conduct. Now, again, I said integrity, transparency, and fairness while making decisions that impact the well-being, that we already said that. Accountability. Why you have to be accountable is that it is very crucial, because it provides the society or the stakeholders checks and balances, because you're answerable for your own actions. So the accountability factor is very, very important. And when you take this thing, it enhances your efficiency, service delivery, minimize the risk of abuse of authority, and strengthens the credibility of government action. So these are all the consequences of taking accountability right in the beginning. Now, if you want to make that, again, there is a hierarchy of ethics. It is not just one ethics, again, these are all, some broad classifications. When you want to take a decision, you also look at your personal morality. Now, when you think about your own personal morality, each one of us, we think we're very moral. But what are the influence? Why, as I said, what is moral to one person may not be a moral to another person. So one is the fundamental sense of distinguishing right from wrong. When you're faced with a situation, okay, if I take decision is right, it is wrong. So you should be very clear about that, distinguishing right from wrong. And the second thing is many of our own morality is influenced by our upbringing also. I will not say it is bad or good or etc. Certainly our upbringing, parent influences, religious convictions, our culture, our social, mores and our life experiences, all these things combine together to shape up your own morality. That is the morality. And then the ethics, set of professional norms, and here there is some bit of guidance, because we all work in profession, we have professional bodies. If you're a doctor, there is a medical council. If you're a law, the legal thing, or if you're a teacher, there are teacher associations. So these professional bodies, many times, they fix the standards, like architects, for example, they have their own standards. So these professional bodies, they fix it. So when you're in a profession, you also want to take, those into consideration, what is right, what is wrong. Because when they fix these criteria, professional bodies, they would have thought about that. A group of people, they have discussed. So that has to become your, sorry about that. And then organizational ethics. So one is about your own person, one is your profession. The third is the organization with which you're working. Many organizations, they also have their own ethical standards. They say do's and don'ts. If you're working in an organization, they have it. They have their own reasons to say that. So you have to follow these kind of ethical things, 3 levels to do that. So it ensures, by following these things, that the public servants uphold the highest standards of integrity, transparency, and accountability when you go through a combination of these things, ethical standards in your life. Integrity is a very, very important thing, core of ethical behavior in public and in administration. We know the definition of integrity. We should be honest, we should be truthful, and we should be transparent. A big point to work out is the conflicts of interest. You should act in the best interest of the citizens, not interests. In fact, we should not be involved in a decision whose consequences of benefit will come to us. During my administration, I made sure that any decision, any recommendations I do, that I should not be the beneficiary of that, because then there is a conflict of interest. You think about that. By doing this thing, by recommending this thing, am I a beneficiary of my own decision? That becomes a conflict of interest. So later on tomorrow, when you become benefit, people will say, he took the decision because he had this selfish motive. Accountability, I have already talked about that. You must take responsibility for conduct, acknowledge mistakes. Okay, we're not perfect, we make some mistakes, but acknowledge it and you learn from them. You honestly acknowledge it, that. And you're answerable to the public and to the highest standards of performance. And then impartiality and fairness. You must treat all individuals fairly and without bias, irrespective of their race, creed, religion, whatever it is. You must apply the same standards. In fact, since we have a lot of women, when it comes to ethics, there is no gender thing. It doesn't depend upon the gender. Whether you're male or female, ethics standards are the same. So impartiality and fairness becomes very much. And here make decisions based entirely on merit, equality, without favoritism or discrimination. I was just mentioned, one thing is that when you become this is to say, when young faculty, they become members of the committee, they come with certain, I wouldn't call it agenda, certain views, and they will only look it from that window. And when you are a member of a committee, you are not there, just as you individual. You have to collectively, you have to work with them. So you have to look at the collective good rather than imposing, doing from your own narrow this thing. You want to bring one candidate, you want to push him, and you don't even consider other candidates, how this is fair, etc. So you have to working in committee, etc. It's very, very important when you become the part of the whole community rather than your own individualness. You can express your opinions, but you should go with the collective opinions. That's always good. Transparency, we all know, and it has to be transparent. It is openness in decision-making process and how and why certain choices are made. Provide clear explanations, engage in open communication to enhance accountability in public confidence. Very, very important. Many times, as leaders, you go up, you may have to take a certain decision, whatever. And you find that is collectively, it's good for the society, good for the people, but your government rule book will not allow that. That poses a dilemma for you. The rule book says you can't do that, but you see. So in those cases, you have to work out your argument. The transparency helps. You write down why you have taken certain decisions in that thing, all the rule book says. And also, I must tell you that the government, we all work in government institutions, I'm sure most of you cannot change the rules easily, right? You have to live with the rules. So, but they should not become an impediment about what you achieve. So I always used to believe that if you know all the rules and if you know what you want, you can actually get what you want. If you know all the rules, you must also know. Many times we know all the rules, but we don't know what we want. And and that doesn't help. Or you know what you want, but you don't know the rules. Half the way they say that you can't get it. Because right from the beginning, whether it's purchase or anything like that, you must know the rule because you can't change the rules. So engage in open communication to enhance. This is very, very important in that context. Respect for the rule of law. I think what I said was the same thing. Public administrators are bound to the rule of law. Although they may have good intentions, many times we write to ministry, they do appreciate what we want to do, but the book says you cannot do that, they're helpless. And many times they try to help us by not saying anything, do it or don't do it. They won't say anything, they just leave it. And you'll be worried, why they're not saying that. But they want you to interpret the rule in your own way, which means that they will support you, when they believe in that. If they do not want, immediately says, no, you cannot do that. So you must know how to work in a government system, bound by the rules, and you should know about that. And rule of law is very, very important. Rules, you cannot break it. You can only slightly bend it. They will allow bending the rule. So you have to, in each decision when you take, which is not as per the rule, write some commentaries, the context and the circumstances under which you took it, and you took it in the larger interest and that you are not a beneficiary, you must be able to justify that. Public interest, that is where you can justify many times. In the primary objective is to serve the public interest, should prioritize the well-being of citizens over personal gain or private interest. By whatever you do, only certain community gets benefited, you should be very careful, in breaking the rule. You break the rule or bend the rule, and to see that one section only gets benefited, you have to be very careful. That is not, accepted. And whatever it should be for the greater good and the social welfare. And you should be competent. You should have the necessary skills, knowledge, and expertise to wade through the things, well informed, evidence based. These are very important. So how does the ethic help is that ethical values and principles guide the decision makers through these complex dilemmas where choices may conflict with one another. So you have to weigh out. Nothing is a straight thing. So that is where you can take the help of ethics, convince yourself that what I'm doing is the right thing to do, and you're doing it for the larger interest. And so you justify that. And okay, you do that many times. We do know a lot of decisions are taken by ministers, government, etc. After that, court cases happen, etc. All these things happen, and those decisions also have moved through a ways of administration maze. It has gone through that, but there are checks and balances. Okay, decision is made. Later on, they may find that for whatever reason, ethical reason or professional reasons, the decision is done. There are checks and balances. There are independent oversight bodies. When you have done a wrong thing, they may have a body who will actually go through that. And if they are convinced that the circumstances under which you take decision, they may, override it. So there are all checks and balances for your accountability. Ombudsman, many institutions have ombudsman who, without being a part of anything of the institution, they look for the balance. Why the institution, that thing, auditing is there, anti-corruption laws, watchdogs to ensure that public officials. So there are a lot of things to safeguard. So if you're ethically right and done it the larger good, there are bodies who would look into that, and as long as you're not a beneficiary of your own decision. Whistleblower, we know that they also come out, and there's a protection. You can also protect them so that they're not harmed. Now, ethical challenges, real challenges come, for example, allocation of public resources fairly and efficiently. We just now went through the budget. They cannot make everybody happy. They're more towards one area, sector than the other one. So there could be some lapses there. Misuse of public funds or personal expenses or embezzlement, that is not allowed. So you have to make sure that you are not misusing the fund. That's very, very important. So allocation of public resources you do in a transparent way, in a fairly justified manner. Bribery and corruption, we know, it is unethical. Nepotism or favoritism, appointing or promoting members without friends, your own interest members, that is not right. And conflict of interest, decisions that benefit themselves, family members, or close associates, that need to be avoided. Data privacy violations, these days that is becoming quite a bit of ethical concern. Mishandling or unauthorized access to sensitive personal or secure data. We collect data, people apply, etc. Many of these things, data, you should use it only for the purpose for which you sought the data. It should not be more than that. Just to give an example, when Aadhaar card was introduced, that was only to, map out. But today, that has become for everything, for voters card, for bank, for everything Aadhaar card has become. When it was initially introduced, that was not the purpose. I mean, there's nothing wrong in that, but it was designed for that. And whatever personal information you give may or may not be necessary in the other sense. And for those things, a new additional data may be required. So you have to collect this kind of data with a purpose for which it is to be used, and it should be used for that. So otherwise, you'll be transgressing, ethical things, unless you justify that. Misrepresentation and false statements, public officials making false statements, misleading the public, providing inaccurate information, abuse of power, using one's position to influence others, whistleblower, we already talked about that. So these are the real challenges, ethical challenges when you are in a noticeable public leadership position. And what is ethical leadership? Now, leaders, at some point, all of you will become leaders. You have to apply those ethical standards, what you expect for others, to yourselves. So setting the tone for the behavior, you must serve as a role model. You must set the example. Leaders serve as living examples of values, behaviors, etc. Because others will ask you, you took this decision, tomorrow you object to some of their action, they say when it applied to you, you did not care. So you have to maintain the same standards was you want to apply for yourself, you apply for others. Articulating clear values, articulating the organization should fit into the organization's core values, prioritizing accountability, promoting a culture of responsibility in your whole organization, that you set the standards, they'll be watching you, whatever you do, you expect others to follow, and you can't ask them to do something which you yourself have not done it. Very, very important. Open communication, that is where free communication before you take a decision with the concerned people, with the stakeholders is very, very important. And rewarding the ethical behavior. If somebody has acted well, reward them. And also you must have short training, like, all of you are come for the training program, not just in the ethical thing, but on various issues. And all these things will certainly, when you assume leadership positions, or even before that, it's always difficult. In fact, after I became a scientist in NCL, I was already 35, 40. At that time, we were asked to go and attend management courses because we had to manage project, raising money and all that thing. We did attend, from administrative staff college and all these things. But what happens is that when you face a situation, you cannot say my management principal said you do 1, 2, 3, and I will do it. It's very, very difficult, that should come inherently to you as a part of your character, as a part of your personality. Slowly it will happen. For that, you have to inculcate all these things. And when you actually face a situation, it's very, very difficult. It's not like the science, if this data, if I get this data, this should be the conclusion. That's very, very difficult to do in this thing. It should become a part of your, personality. Providing training and development becomes important, creating supportive environment. These are some of the things. Addressing ethical lapses. When ethical lapses occur, ethical leaders address them promptly and fairly. And also one is very, very important, when something happens, very easy to give punishment, you can damn somebody. But when you're in the leadership position, you cannot entirely go by rules. Yes, somebody has done. You must also have that humane touch. You give that humane touch, give the benefit of doubt. You put yourself in that position. What would have happened if I were there? Would I have taken that same decision? So that humane touch is very, very important. Without that humane touch, certainly the moral, ethical values don't work. In essence, ethical leadership is instrumental in cultivating an organizational culture. In governance, ethics in governance leads to moral principles that guide the actions. I think some of them may be, if you look at the history, go back, kings, queens, we have so many of them, 2000 years back. We all read about them. They all had some philosophy. They all had their moral values. Earlier, they were calling it moral leadership. I think at this point I can mention Ramayana and Mahabharata. I think, Bhagavad Gita, all of you heard. It's all full of moral, ethical dilemmas at every stage. I'm not talking from a religion perspective, but only talking from, if you really take that and read, every time, whether it's Krishna Arjuna's thing or Ram's behavior, look in today's context, everything is a moral, ethical dilemma. How they took decisions. That's, it's a great, though in that way, if you look at from that point, they're very, very great epics. Ancient civilization and moral leadership today, we call it ethical standards. Key historical events have shaped our understanding of ethical governance. So it's very, very important. Now, so ethical leaders, sometimes keep repeating integrity, empathy. They understand and consider the feelings of others, that humane touch, that empathy is very, very important. Accountability. Ethical leaders foster a culture and collaboration within the organization. Improve this, and how does it do is finally it will help you in improve decision making process, enhances employees morale and productivity, and that leads to the decision for the public trust, etc. So these things, I will probably skip. Transparency and accountability in governance, some of them could be, the same things. Mechanisms of ensuring accountability that I already talked about, audits thing. Public reporting, government should provide regular updates on their activities and expenditures. Citizen feedback, that is very important. You should always, whatever action you have done, take the feedback so that they tell you, and it helps analyze your own actions. Now this Information Act, Right to Information Act, also Right to Information Act, I think, did I go forward, backwards? I think, yeah. Okay, let's start. So honesty is important, justice, to be fair means treat everyone equally and offer opportunities with no favoritism. Respect is very important. Respect others around you, regardless of their position and identifying characteristics. Integrity, responsibility, transparency, and improving the workplace. Very important in this combat workplace. Several things happen, stereotypes. There are overgeneralized perceptions and beliefs about groups of people can also lead to unfair decisions and harmful. Many times people talk about when they come to that, they generalize the whole thing, either in terms of race, gender, age, sexual orientation, religious. You should not, just because of one person would have done that, you cannot, overgeneralize it. Many things, many people do that. That should be avoided, that unethical. And promoting diversity, in fact, it's always known that the more diverse population you have, the places become more creative. People bring different things from their own cultural values. I think America is a good example. I think, now, of course, with Trump believes something else different, but earlier one, they just care for merit. They don't worry about your origin. Today you see that how many of our own, Indian people, Indian origin people, they have all rise to the top. They care for merit, what they bring to the organization. When you select people, even in India, we make the mistake. Many times, the faculty, candidate comes and we discuss with our colleagues, take their opinions. Many times I used to find that most people give a negative opinion. Oh, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. We forget to judge a person what positive things he brings to us. We must first check. Everybody is negative. If I apply the same standards to our own thing, we would not have got selected. So first see what is the new thing he's going to bring or add to your organization, which you do not have. Then look at the negative aspect. Negative things can be improved, but if they do not have anything positive, you can't do that. So that's very, very important. Promoting diversity is one of the best ways to overcome the workplace stereotype. Give employees a voice so that you and other leaders receive meaningful feedback, stay accountable, give employees a platform to, you must hear them. Many times I think in some organization, even the leader is judged by them. They also judge, many private organizations, they do that. But it is unnerving. I always feel scared to talk to my youngsters and asking, tell me what is my weakness. They will only tell about my food weakness, not the other kind of weaknesses. So it's not always an easy or a comfortable task. Develop your own authentic leadership style, which is defined by principles, your principles, and putting up your beliefs, into the organization's success. You have to do that. Okay. So that's about the general ethics, governance, etc. So I still have about 10 minutes. Okay. So what I'll now do is that I'll concentrate more on the science part, because many of you are, coming from science background, how ethics is important in science. We talked about society, leadership, management, and today it is much more under scanner in all the science what we do. Let us ask, what is science? Science is nothing but search for truth, right? We are searching for truth. And, that's what your main purpose is, what is truth, finally, the nature. And you cannot search truth by falsifying things. right? It is antithesis. How can you search truth by telling lies, etc.? You'll never reach. I think many people don't realize that, right? So a quest for objective knowledge about nature. Science can answer questions only which is a natural phenomena. It cannot answer questions about unnatural phenomena. Like if you ask, does soul exist? Science cannot answer that. Science goes by theory, prediction. I will talk about that. You cannot prove or disprove about by scientific means, you cannot disprove the soul does not exist, right? Or there's a rebirth. So there are not natural phenomena. So the science is that only it can answer about natural phenomena. It is a social institution serving society's needs to improving people's lives. Science has helped to lift our comfort, life, health, etc. It is a profession. It involves training, standards, career, respect, and privilege. And the final goal is to satisfy, of course, the basic goals. What we start is to satisfy curiosity and advance knowledge. And when you advance knowledge, what is that? The more you know, the more you don't know. That's the infinite area of knowledge. You never know that I know completely about this thing. You never reach the situation. The more you do that, cancer is an example. You're not been able to cure cancer. Earlier, people were dying without knowing cancer. Today, they're dying knowing it is cancer. But we have understood some mechanisms, etc., etc. So knowledge, it advances knowledge. And it is like, there is no limit at all. We can go, I think even after 100, 200 years, people will be still doing science, because the more you know, the more you don't know, you start, discovering things. So because man, we are curious as a human being. Nobody can cut down our curiosity. Everybody is curious. As child, we are much more curious. As we become adults, I think we become less curious. We go by, preconceived notions rather than asking questions. So, but the goals of science you can do in different things. You can do in government institutions, and that is mainly the goals are to serve national needs, nations, people and property, compete and cooperate with other nations, global security, advanced knowledge. That is the government goals. If you're doing an industry, you have to, industry needs, stockholders' profits, cooperate with other companies, global market, etc. Universities, of course, to advance knowledge, to educate students, to serve the public. So science done in different institutions have, although there's a lot of things common, the purpose are slightly different. We have to accept that. So different, but does it mean that we should apply different standards of ethics to different, if you're doing government, it's a different standard, etc.? No. When you do science, all of them are combined, in the same kind of ethical standards. It does not differ, although your objectives are different. So why we should practice ethics in science? Science has a special role with respect to ethics. Society demands high standards for scientists. We must build trust because it is supported by society, our science. Society means you pay tax, the government supports you. That is very, very important. In fact, when I talk to the students, ask them, why they want to take science, I tell them that in any other job, whatever you do, somebody else is getting benefited, right? Company director or somebody else. Only in science, first you get benefit, and then everywhere they all have to earn salary by doing some work. But here, whether you do work or not, you get a salary as a scientist, right? I mean, promotion, etc. are there. But here they're paying you. In all the other places, you have to work on somebody else's idea. The corporate manager says you work in this, we pay. Here you have an idea. DST supports it, DBT supports it. A crazy idea you have, somebody else gives you money to work on your own idea. In no other profession it happens, right? So science is, it's not always easy to determine the right thing to do. Breaches of scientific ethics makes headlines. Anything, become headline. You do good science, you may not read the headlines. But you do one bad thing, you will reach the headlines. So it's important to earn society trust in science. Very, very important. So how do we conduct science? Very famous, Karl Popper, he said science proceeds, in a linear way, hypothesis, a particular idea. You generate a hypothesis and you predict something, you do an experiment to test the hypothesis, you evaluate it. And in fact, in the next one, you see that the whole process. You start from asking a question, do background research, ask a question, and then how, what, when, which way. This is the kind of questions you ask. And then you go about, find out what is already known. The frustration in science is that when you do something and publish or send it, somebody says that it's already been done. That's a frustration. So you must do In fact, my supervisor said first search and then do research. Research, that's what he used to say. So what is already known, that is the best way to go forward. And then what you do is you have an educated guess. If things work, if it happens like this, it will become like this. Construct an experiment and hypothesis, test with an experiment, and the results will say whether it is true or false. Test with an experiment, analyze the results, draw conclusion. Hypothesis is true, that is good. If the hypothesis is false, you go back again, think again, construct hypothesis, change, because the experimental results are the sacrosanct, provided you do it properly. So this is the way science moves. So the object of research is to extend human knowledge, but in individual's knowledge enters the domain of science only after we present. Okay, you do all this thing, you find out. That's not the end. Unless you present it to your community, either you give a lecture or you publish it, etc., then science is not complete. You have to share your thing, because it's not something which you can feel happy, I have done it, that's it. Others have to vet it, what is right, and they will improve it also. So the objective thing, your individual's knowledge enters the domains of science only if it actually comes in a journal, or only after it's presented to others in such a fashion that they can independently judge its validity. That is important. Whatever you do should be able to reproduce, everywhere. That's very important. So publication is important. Paper, you know how it is. In fact, Miller said that if it's not published, it was not done. If you don't publish it, that means you have not done it. Any publication, it has to, come in the things. And it is not a sin to publish, it has to be there. Every work has a place in literature. You have to do that. If your research does not generate papers, it might just as well not have been done. That's what George White cites, Harvard professor, he said that. But so to achieve that level, what is important is ethical conduct. One is the honesty. You should not fabricate, falsify, and misrepresent data of results. I don't have to, amplify this. You should be objective, unbiased, and truthful in all aspects of the research process. You should not let, wishful thinking. You believe in something and you do only that much, you neglect all the other data. Charles Darwin, when he went on the voyage, he used to write, he had this, evolution theory working in his mind, but anything which does not fall into his theoretical thing, he used to make a great note of that. He used to write in the book. So if something goes negative, it's very, very important, because that could be the truth. You may be misled by something else. So that should happen. So carefulness and diligence are very, very important. Openness and fairness, share data, results, method, ideas, techniques, and tools with other practitioners. Of course, the patent is there, you have to protect it at some point, but unless somebody else uses, it is no use. Nowadays, this open science, I think all of you have heard about open access journals, open science, where everything has to be open, it should be available. Then only they will value as a scientist. It's becoming a very, very important movement now, open science, all the data, I think recently there was this AlphaFold. They were not, first time when they published papers, Google, they did not reveal all the thing. But second time, they revealed all the things. So the data has to be open. Allow other scientists to review work. Every time, publish a paper, when somebody else quotes you and gives a positive, yes, it worked like that, you feel very happy because somebody else has tested. Somewhere you do in a corner here, somebody in the global way, somebody entirely who don't know you, they do it and they certify it. That is the greatest happiness for a scientist. So respect, credit, efficiency, you have to have this professional respect. Important thing is, credit should be given to those who deserve it. Many times, because you give credit, your paper may come back. They said this is already known. So you avoid giving, that reference. They're all unethical ones, because somebody will find out later on. But should use resources efficiently, responsibly, write papers as truthful and as best as you can. What is publishable is that papers which are original and significant, they are publishable. Okay. And how the findings relate to advanced understanding, these are the things which you have to really highlight in your paper. But what is not acceptable is that routine extensions of previous reports, incremental, fragmentary things, verbose, poorly organized papers, violations of ethical guidelines, including plagiarism of any type or degree, they are not acceptable. Nowadays, it is becoming, increasingly difficult for people, both for the journals. Well, individuals are also becoming very clever. They're finding new ways of, getting over these things. So in that, all of you have heard about what is called plagiarism, the use of someone else's prior ideas, processes, results without explicitly acknowledging original authors and source. There's nothing wrong. Science always moves, you're not saying it for the first time. I found it, anything you say, somebody would have said it in a direct or indirect manner 40, 50 years, 60 years back. So we always stand, on those kind shoulders of those giants. So you must be very, very careful, and you must acknowledge where the thing. I must tell you, I'm reading a book by Venki Ramakrishnan. You know Venki Ramakrishnan, Nobel laureate from Cambridge. He's a physicist who's did X-ray crystallography of a biological molecule and got Nobel Prize in chemistry. He's written a book. All of you must leave it. It's called as Why We Die. The book is amazing reading. Actually, if you want to understand why we die, we must understand why we live, right? That's the way he writes it. But what I liked about that book is that, we know several, biology people who got Nobel, etc. He actually goes, for any phenomena, he goes and cites the original paper, whom many people don't know. He has gone and given the credit, the first person who showed that idea. It's amazing. They are not well known in the literature, but he has taken the pain to go and acknowledge that person. That experiment later on, amplified and reached, other Nobel Prizes. So it's very, very important to give credit to the original authors. Self-plagiarism. It is not okay to repeat exactly even what I think most of you know. You publish a paper, exactly reproduce it, that is self-plagiarism. There are two things. One is plagiarism. The other is called similarity index, if you've heard. Similarity index means, repeating the same sentence. Plagiarism is claiming something which you have not done, or whatever is wrong. That is, you may misinterpret something, the data. That is not a misconduct, somebody else will interpret, right. So exactly reproduce of that, you had to write originally, or you had to quote, give a reference, give quote, etc. That is very, very important. There are several documents available in defining that. Other types of ethical violations, duplicate publication. I'm chief editor of a ACS journal. People submit it at the time when you submit it, you declare that it has not been submitted to any other journal in part or full, etc., etc. But they would have submitted that. Suppose somebody submitted it. After getting the review, etc., then they find that it's an open access journal you have to pay. Then they will say, we have submitted earlier, sorry. So there's a violation. In fact, authors can be seriously marked and read, and then, we will not take any of those papers. So duplicate publication, submission of research findings, failure to inform the editor of the related papers, and or suppose something is in press, you do that. Unrevealed conflicts of interest and misrepresentation of research findings, etc. These are all, nowadays, a lot of things having about image duplication. In the areas like biology and nanotechnology, a lot of microscope images are there. It's very, very difficult to check, they just they duplicate the same image. But there are now experts who find out, and in science you can cheat once and you may get away, but you can't do it several times, and somewhere you will be caught. If not now, maybe 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. Today there are a lot of softwares which analyze the supplementary information and come out with it. So image duplication. There is something called paper mill. You've heard of paper mill? Have you heard? Paper mill is it's manufacturing a paper. No work, nothing done. You collect authors from 5, 6, 7, 8 institutions. Their email, everything is there. You make a combination of the titles of the paper and make a combination of the different paragraphs, figures, etc. And you do it such a way that as though it's a original paper. They're called paper mills. Innumerable paper mills are coming. It's all done. Somebody sits and has a computer, and you can easily check them. There are ways of checking them. All of them, they come from some IP address. When I look at a paper with 10 authors from 10 different countries, I know it's a paper, this thing. And you go and check the authors, you will find that either they're not there or they're not working in this area, etc. It's becoming a very big business, paper mill. And buying authors. I've seen an advertisement. They say that if we are submitting a paper, if you'd like to be an author, we'll give you $1,000. You're just putting your name, these paper mills. So these things are, happening, sporadically now, not submitting new raw data. In these cases, you ask for the raw data. They have not done the experiment. There is no raw data available. So there are ways of catching them. So they're all ethically. So scientific misconduct, fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, all these things, that is very wrong. And, in fact, that's the first thing we tell our students is that please don't get onto that, because science is nothing but searching for truth. You can't do all that. So negligence, deviation from methodological norms, they're called reputable errors. There's a set method, this is a way to prove experiments, but you do something else, then you have to justify that. Or deliberate dishonesty, deviation from moral norms. These are all the ones which should not be conducted. Studies show that unethical conduct is directly, why do people do that? You can ask, why they have to do that? Why they have to pay me $1,000 just to give my name? Because there's some other bigger price for him if he publishes paper in the journal. So increased academic expectation, this is the main thing, is increased academic expectations. There's a lot of pressure in institutions to publish papers, so they want to do that. Personal ambition, vanity, and desire for fame. We have found that this is becoming increasingly prevalent in journals. In 1 year, this person submits 10 papers, 10 manuscripts. It's impossible to, on similar kind of related topics, make active voice, passive voice combination, change the titles, 10 papers, 5 into one journal, 5 into another journal. And so personal ambition, laziness, being sloppy, and greed, which is directly into the financial gain. They get so many publications. I don't want to name any country, but we know there are some countries which this is very, very prevalent, and they lack the moral capacity to distinguish. Now, I will not go. There are plenty of them, where people have cheated and have got red-handed and have been publicly shamed. Like, for example, is South Korea faked results to support his claim to have cloned human stem cells that are supposed to be impossible at that time. They did that, and they were immediately caught. This person faked in 15 NIH grant applications, to get NIH grant proposals. They used to write in different format, etc., and they've been caught. And cold fusion is another classical one. I will not go into the detail to tell you that if you do something wrong, there's a way of catching them. You can't get away by that, And some cases of misconduct, cold fusion, I already talked about that. And here is a falsification of data. He's a Nobel laureate, actually, because many times, we don't see what our students do exactly. And you keep telling this for ambition, we should be nice, etc., etc. They can't get the result. Then they will try to, tune the result to your thing because they want to please you, and which you may not be, knowing even that. So big groups, it happens, this is an immunology, falsification of data, poor record keeping. So there are several, misconduct things are there. Now there is a thing about what is called the recycling text. In one paper it is written, you recycle the text. And although it is not I'm reaching the end now. So recycling, whether you can use your thesis to write papers. It can use it as long as you acknowledge it, etc. That is one of the things. There are several, these are all the plagiarism checkers are there. And journals, there is serious, there's several ways in which you can detect, the publication thing, scientific misconduct or ethics. So I'll skip these things. I'll go to the last slide. And yeah, this is important. Now, with technology coming up, how are we going to deal with ethics? Ethics and technology. It's important. I think I'll just take 2 slides here. Now, technology is reshaping governments in many ways. Now, digital transparency, everything is, governments are using technology to enhance transparency. E-governance is coming. Cyber security, protecting data is crucial. And so we have now increasing challenges. For example, artificial intelligence brings questions about accountability and bias. The whole artificial intelligence works with a bias, right? You train the model with some bias, it goes to some final results. So it is dependent upon the bias, data privacy, environmental ethics. So the new technologies will probably bring new kinds of levels of ethical, aspects or ethical governance. So increased collaboration, I think public-private sectors, legal frameworks had to be tightened to avoid these things, greater emphasis on stakeholder engagement. And future governments will depend upon our ability to adopt technological changes while maintaining ethical standards. Any new technology comes, you have to fix new ethical standards, for that. So I think this is my last slide. So ethics are essential in governance. Following ethical guidance, leaders can build trust with the public. It not only helps make better choices. When ethics are prioritized, it leads to better governance, and understanding the importance of ethics in governance allows us to tackle challenges more effectively. Scientific ethics should become an integral part of graduate research. It is not taught in very many things. We give only 1 lecture, 2 lecture, but I think it has to become ethics awareness. And the basic rule is that we should tell students, don't do anything that would embarrass you or your guide or your institution when people found out about it. That's a summary of the ethics thing. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. Very nice talk. Sir, you said about the ethics in a committee when
Yeah.
you are in a part of a committee. So if in the committee, one person doesn't follow these kind of ethical practices. So in that case, how to respond? Like even you are right, but you know that person he's trying to push a candidate. So how to tackle such situations?
Yeah, try to bring him to the floor saying, this is not right, ethical, it is your opinion. But the committee is not only two people, no, there are five people, right? So go by the majority opinion. I'm sure if one person is faltering, he has his own personal agenda to push something, other four people will recognize that. Some people are vociferous, they shout, etc., to catch attention, but the chairman should know, how to deal with that thing. I think, if you think that the five people think that, no, it is not right, majority wins. But they also should guard, they should not be having some other weakness in their own judgments. That's important. Yeah. Yeah. I think one radical in a committee can cause misery. I know, I know that. Because it's purely by vocal power or articulation thing, not by the merit of the situation. It's vocal power. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, what are the current guidelines for utilizing AI for manuscript writing? Because we are not very sure whether we can use for language refinements,
Yeah.
not for properly getting the introductions and all
Yeah.
done by the AI, but at least refining the languages and all.
Yeah, there are already some restrictions are coming up. First of all, there is a basic definition that all authors should be human beings, right? So that excludes AI being an author. Hmm? And the second thing is ChatGPT. That's what they're using. They've already found out several phrases, about 50, 60 phrases. I mean, it could be even more. When ChatGPT has its own limitations, right?
Correct.
They repeatedly, ChatGPT documents use those phrases. The construction of sentences, they're different. They use some abnormal words for the same thing, which are not even present in the dictionary. So we have, since I'm in ACS thing, there is a whole gadget, even to recognize whether you have used ChatGPT, etc. There are ways of checking, but it's not still perfect, but one can make out, So the same people will create that. Same fellows who did ChatGPT will also, like, people who create virus for the computer, they also do the anti, I think, etc. ChatGPT per se is not thing. Yes. Many people acknowledge we have used ChatGPT for doing this thing. They do that. If, for example, if two people use ChatGPT, will they get the same language? Yes. That also one can check up actually. I think so. AI cannot be an author. But as I said, something cannot be proven, something cannot be disproven also. These, you can use it to make, it should not change your science, basic science or the thing. It can only help you putting your, thing in a more articulate manner, etc.
Yeah, that is what, because only because of the similarity.
Just yeah, there is no general, still it has not reached that stage. Yeah. I think the answers are more. Yeah.
I want to ask that people who are writing the paper, if the first language is not English, always there is a comment that yes, something is not correctly. So the specific this comment is always there. You rewrite your things. But as a researcher, if I submit my para to the chat GPT and it's a refinement of my concept. So how it is same for the what for the
yeah, as I said, ChatGPT still it is used to make your paper more, etc. It's not a thing, but it should not distort your things. That is important. You may not understand the way in which the language it changes. It may give a different meaning to your science. That's where you have to be careful. Yeah. No, yeah, ChatGPT, you can use it, but you should get convinced that it has done a better job than, yourself. See, the thing is that you have found a phenomena, you have found a result, you are the scientist, you know best, you understand it. What ChatGPT will understand about your science? It only refines the language, right? And it cannot, but by doing that thing, it should not distort your science. Then, if you don't notice it, then it goes to wrong. Yeah, but this language editing journal, it is there. I still remember, I had published a paper with co-author from UK. It came back saying that your language, you are not a native language. This thing. So it tells that, he's from UK, his language is English. So that is a subjective thing. Some referees say that. But now it is not, limitation anymore. There are ways in which you can improve your language. Yeah.
Gracious permission from Mike and Alison. I'm taking one small.
Okay.
So very good presentation. You said that the three main qualities of an ethical leader are integrity and accountability.
Yeah.
So now in a kind of a scenario, I would say, he or she has given the duty of running a project to one of his colleagues. And per se, they were not able to meet the deliverables. So now they are accountable for each penny that has been received from the funding agency. So in that situation, how would you be empathetic to your colleague? Because you cannot, you cannot say, okay, whatever you have done is fine, because you are accountable for everything.
Yeah. Find out why they could not deliver it. Find out, is it due to scientific reasons or some other sloppy thing, something? You have to do that. If something sloppy, you remove them and put somebody else. But your idea may not be working. And if you get convinced, that's the integrity. You go and tell I started with the idea. I see. Nobody can say that 100% whatever. If everything works, why we should even do it, right? So in fact, when I was working in CSI, they said proposals should be given only if it has a chance of 20% success. Then we'll consider only such proposals because they're the ones which make difference, right? So if it is not deliverable, find out why it could not be delivered, scientific, technical reasons, and convince, get an extension, put somebody else, do that. Yeah, the ways of doing that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Quality of time we need to cut it down, but I'm told you about a lot of.
I can share these slides, if you want it. Sure. Yeah.
So this let us thank Professor Ganesh for his wonderful presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, our photographer is the boss here.
Yeah. I put it like this. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Professor Ganesh for this lecture. In spite of his busy schedule, it is organized in another big conference of experience. So we'd like you for taking this time. Thank you very much. And I now request you to kindly proceed to the training. We already late. This meeting.
You can leave this soon. You can leave it. I can leave that soon.
Just for recording purposes.
Yeah.
You can send me the slides.
I can. Yeah.
So what is the usual procedure adopt if he or she or a student making a plagiarism or ethical correction into a manuscript later found by the editor? The whole the team will be banned, or what is the steps usually being taken?
Yeah, the principal author gets the stake.
Principal author.
Yeah, principal author, main author is normally. But sometimes in many biology journals, they write which author did what.
Okay. Yeah.
So that others don't get damned, for one person's thing. But otherwise, the principal author has to take the,
Okay. So is it vary from
Sure.
is it vary from journals to journal or the decisions?
It is.
Yes.
See what happens in those cases. I did not have time. There's an institutional thing. The journal gets, institution has to conduct investigation to find out where things went wrong.
Okay.
Is it the student's problem, PI's problem, etc.
Yes. Okay.
But the institutions, they don't want to do that.
Yes.
Because
That
it will make a bad name for the institution. They will say we're doing investigation. Many times journals have written, I complain to them, you have to finish your process. They're not doing that. They will do that.
Because the bad name will come.
But I think, you have to own up. You see, if you're an author of a paper, you assume responsibility for everything, whether you've done or not. You cannot say, then you become a technical assistant.
Yeah.
You are responsible for the whole science. You must understand. If you're presenting, you must be able to present the whole paper. Any author should be able to do that. That's what I think. But there are specialized areas where it will not happen.
Is there any tool that is maintained in the journal to find out whether it is an LLM model created paper if the author doesn't declare it?
If it is, yeah,
It's an AI model, LLM model based
yeah,
paper.
yeah.
The author doesn't declare it, like, do you have any?
I think there are some signatures to be there. That's all. You know, they cannot prove it, but
Language
some
pattern.
signatures.
Sir, I have one.
Editors, like.
You see, it's a chat GPT. AI is mostly for research. They do, yeah.
Help from any AI.
Yeah, yeah, they are asking.
Now they're asking.
Asking, I think some journals have,
One more question.
still there is no uniformity. thing.
Uniformity,
Yeah.
exactly.
So they're still, you know, depending upon their experience. They do that.
They don't declare. Any kind of tool is maintained in
Yeah.
the journal, publishers.
I think some signatures should be there. When you use
Okay,
any of the
based on that.
softwares, there are some signatures they can find out. You know.
Sometimes it would be just for the refinement of the language.
That's- yeah.
Nothing.
It depends on what for you're using.
Exactly.
Sir, like you have been directed to 2 institutions. One thing I want to ask is, like you said in our
Okay, okay, go ahead. Yeah. No, it's okay. I'll take it. No problem. Yeah.
you said like we should be empathetic and
Thank you, Rajani, for calling me.
Thank you.
empathetic in taking decision and taking equally. But that's also true. We cannot make everyone happy.
Yeah.
So sometimes the decision we take, we do in a good faith. It may not feel good for others. So how to be like a good
Communication.
leader or
Open
effective leader?
communication. To communicate with
Transparency,
the
actually,
transparency,
yesterday-
communication. You know, see, as director, you know, people, many things I know, it cannot be done. Thing is, anybody who wants on my door, even here also, it's always open.
Yeah.
Because I've been appointed as the director to solve the, you know, administration.
okay.
Keep it open. When somebody takes, I want to come, I know exactly why he's coming. I know my answer, but still I want to hear. You hear and tell them,
That-
"Oh, look, this
that is
situation." The more psychological thing is, you know, director has heard me, or whomsoever, HOD, etc. And they're unable to help, you know, they will understand your perspective of why. Because you should have a genuine reason. You know, you cannot say that I will not, you know, I just don't want to do it. That's not the answer. Look, this, etc. You know, if I help you, if I sanction this, I have to give for 5 people, I don't have money, so we'll do it. You know?
Okay.
So best thing is the communication. These days we resort to email, you know, 2 people will be sitting next to each other. They will have enough time to type.
Yeah.
Just knock the door, go to the next door and talk, finished. You know, we don't, you know,
And
do
communication.
that. Communication is the main thing.
So what about conflict management also as a researcher? Sometimes
Yeah, it will be there.
How-
Depends on, you know, I think finally somebody has to
interview.
relent. You know, yes, you know, the conflict management will be there. Again, depends upon, you know, what are the interests in those conflicts each one of them have. You know, what are the stakes which are involved. It depends on that. You know, there are no absolute this thing, you know, finally we are human beings, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can we have a photograph?
Yeah.
We were also looking for it.
Self-plagiarism in the thesis.
Thesis.
For us to we insist.
कोई भी नहीं है,
always
change
the
ही कर-
entire thesis is published.
नहीं,
All
वहाँ
the
से
papers
नहीं
are from chemistry only. So the student have a tendency, has a tendency of copying from the paper. It saves his fees or her time. But is it coming under self-plagiarism here?
Yes, self-plagiarism, you know,
Sir,
plagiarism. See, it's not plagiarism, it's
Yeah.
it's got similarity. Plagiarism,
Yeah.
but similar.
yes.
Isn't it? You know, where you misfabricate, that or you claim somebody else is yours. That's not plagiarism. This is called